It's 10 o'clock. This is Sky News at 10. Our top stories. The Chancellor denies accusation she misled the public about the state of the economy before unveiling a raft of tax rises in the budget.
Just asked you, did you lie? And I have to say, the answer I was looking for was no. I didn't hear the word no.
But you also asked about welfare in that question.
No, I just asked you, did you lie?
Of course I didn't.
Looking to the future, the US Secretary of State in upbeat mood following peace talks with a Ukrainian delegation.
We don't just want to end the war, we also want to help Ukraine be safe forever, so never again will they face another invasion, and equally importantly, we want them to enter an age of true prosperity.
A landscape of devastation, more than 800 killed after floods and landslides in Indonesia, Thailand and Sri Lanka. The Pope arrives in Lebanon as part of his first foreign trip, aiming to bring a message of peace to a region scarred by war and conflict. It's still all to play for in the Formula One world title race after Max Verstappen wins the Qatar Grand Prix. And we'll take a first look at tomorrow's front pages in our press preview from 10:30. Good evening. Of course, I didn't lie. The Chancellor was insistent when she spoke to Sky's Trevor Phillips that she was open and honest about the reasons why she raised taxes in the budget. And Rachel Reeves says she did not mislead the public about the state of the country's finances. She's accused of exaggerating the extent of the fiscal situation to justify tax rises of £26 billion. The Conservative leader, Kemi Badenoch, has repeated her calls for the Chancellor to resign. Tomorrow, the Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, is set to give a speech defending the decisions the government made in the budget. Our political correspondent, Tamara Cohen, reports.
A Chancellor facing a storm of criticism, not just for a budget asking people to pay more, but why the forecasts told a different story.
I just asked you, did you lie?
Of course I didn't. I wanted to ensure that our economy was resilient to withstand shocks, like conflicts, like trade barriers, and that's why I wanted to increase the headroom.
Headroom, that's the buffer she wanted to achieve by the end of the Parliament.
To do those things in the context of a downgrade in our productivity, which costs £16 billion, I needed to increase taxes. And I was honest and frank about that.
The Chancellor defended using some of what she raised to increase benefits for low-income families with more than 2 children.
I'm a mum with 2 children. I am very happy to support children from poorer backgrounds live more fulfilling lives. In fact, when I became Chancellor, I said that I knew that my time as Chancellor would have been a success if there are ordinary children from working class backgrounds living more fulfilling lives. And I think it is very difficult to live a fulfilling life when you're growing up in poverty.
The Conservative leader went on the attack.
I think the Chancellor has been doing a terrible job. She's made a mess of the economy, and you look at the papers today, she has told lies. This is a woman who, in my view, should be resigning. What we are doing is taxing a lot of people who are struggling to pay for those on benefits.
This has been a damaging row for the Chancellor and will drag in the Prime Minister. He knew about those forecasts and tomorrow will come out and defend her decisions. Their fortunes are tied and popularity with the public has already plummeted. At Raymond's Christmas tree shop in West Yorkshire, he was hoping the Chancellor would lighten the load.
We need a change. Christ, they've only been in 2 minutes and they've messed it all up, so we do.
I don't think she did enough. I think she should have taxed people with wealth more heavily.
No, I didn't feel betrayed. I just think it's a really difficult... it's a really difficult balancing act at the moment.
Rachel Reeves fighting back, but likely to face choppy days and weeks ahead.
And Tamara's live in Downing Street for us tonight. So, Tamara, what is the Prime Minister likely to say tomorrow, and can he rescue the Chancellor?
Well, look, no Chancellor wants to have their honesty called into question, and there are some signs tonight concerning signs of cabinet disquiet too. One cabinet minister quoted anonymously in the Times newspaper saying the cabinet were also misled about those forecasts, leading to a, quote, hokey-cokey in the run-up to the budget of talking about income tax rises and then rowing back. So there is a rescue job to be done. Keir Starmer will say the budget made the right choices for Britain, and there is some frustration Ukrainian government that some of what they feel were the retail offers, the freeze in rail fares, some money off electricity bills, have not been very much discussed, overshadowed by this big row about taxes and about the forecast. Keir Starmer is also expected to acknowledge that he needs to go further and faster with the cost of living. He'll be talking about cutting red tape in order to build infrastructure and saying that that's what he wants to achieve in the next couple of years, because a poll today has shown that just 6% of people think the budget will have an impact on their cost of living, a positive impact. So there is a repair job to be done, and we'll see whether in the next few days Downing Street insists that the Chancellor didn't mislead anyone and that the budget went down well with the markets. It also went down well with Labour MPs. We'll see if the mood starts to darken. The Chancellor is also likely to be called to Parliament tomorrow to explain some of her decisions.
Tamara, thank you. Ukrainian peace talks have taken place in Florida, where the US Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, says he expects more progress towards a deal to bring an end to the war. The discussions are aimed at advancing on the basis of what was achieved in the Geneva talks last Sunday.
There are a lot of moving parts, and obviously there's another party involved here that'll have to be a part of the equation, and that'll continue later this week when Mr. Woodcock travels to Moscow, although we've also been in touch in varying degrees with the Russian side, but we have a pretty good understanding of their views as well. So much work remains, but today was again a very productive and useful session where I think additional progress was made, and we continue to be realistic about how difficult this is, but optimistic, particularly given the fact that as we've made progress, I think there is a shared vision here that this is not just about ending the war, which is very important. It is about securing Ukraine's future, a future that we hope will be more prosperous than it's ever been.
Our objective is a prosperous, strong Ukraine. We were discussing about the future of Ukraine. We discussed all the important matters that are important for Ukraine, for Ukrainian people, and U.S. was super supportive. We already had a successful meeting in Geneva, and today we continued this success. So at the moment, this meeting was productive and successful.
Let's cross live to Washington now, our US correspondent David Blevins. And David, the Secretary of State Marco Rubio there, fairly positive, saying that the talks were productive and useful, but admitting that more work needs to be done to achieve peace.
Yes, and this could be a critical week for Ukraine, not because there is any indication of Moscow and Kyiv having found any common ground suddenly, but because President Trump is pressing harder than ever for an end to this war. So we have on one side a 28-point peace plan brokered by Trump and approved by Putin, and we have on the other side a 19-point version of that, revised after the intervention of European leaders in Geneva. And right now, there is no reason to believe that Putin will suddenly accept what he might regard as a watered-down version of the deal. Instead, he will want to capitalise upon the fact that President Zelensky is in the throes of a corruption scandal in Ukraine. President Putin, by the way, will meet Trump's peace envoy, Steve Witkoff, in Moscow early in the week. I think the one thing we can say is that there is an unusual focus on the potential peace dividend. We're hearing a lot about the economic prosperity that is potentially coming to Ukraine, to Russia, and to the United States. And to many people, that sounds more like a business deal than it does a diplomatic breakthrough. And while that may appeal to the transactional president in the White House, Ukraine has been very clear from the outset that its sovereignty is not for sale, regardless of the price.
David, thank you. And as you say, Steve Witkoff heading to Russia this week. To Southeast Asia now, where hundreds of people have been killed in flooding and landslides, and relief efforts are ongoing after a cyclone brought torrential rain. The tropical storm that formed in the Malacca Strait has caused catastrophic damage across the region. The number dead from flooding and landslides on Indonesia's Sumatra island has risen to 442, with dozens still missing. Rescuers are desperately trying to save people across Indonesia's Aceh province, with whole villages left underwater. Meanwhile, in Thailand, at least 170 people have died in flooding across the south, including 110 in the Son Kala province, where on Friday 13 inches of rain fell in one day, the highest single-day tally in 300 years. And across the Bay of Bengal, Sri Lankan authorities have said at least 212 people have died and hundreds more are still missing after Cyclone Ditwa hit the region on Friday. Our correspondent Laura Bundock reports.
The rains have finally stopped, but they've left a landscape of catastrophic devastation. This is Indonesia's Aceh province, where whole villages are underwater. And this submerged scene stretches for miles. From the air, rescuers are trying to reach the worst affected areas and deliver vital supplies. The conditions are challenging. Search teams are out, but access is dangerous and difficult. This bridge brought down. A cut-off community now using makeshift pulleys for food and aid. Across the region, the death toll continues to rise. On the island of Sumatra, body bags are lined up. Casualties awaiting identification. For families missing loved ones, it is a heartbreaking wait.
We heard on Thursday night that a flood had struck and our parents' house was destroyed. We tried to get to the location but couldn't because the road was blocked and inaccessible. We could only reach the site on Friday.
The extreme rains caused landslides, with neighbourhoods buried beneath deep mud. Elsewhere, rescue teams wade through deep waters to bring people to safety. For others, though, it is too late. In Sri Lanka, yet more extreme weather. A cyclone caused flooding, washing away homes and roads. Stranded families now winched away from rooftops. This has been some of the worst flooding for years. The tropical storms battered huge provinces. Here in southern Thailand, receding waters reveal the damage. The torrential rains have destroyed homes and roads. From country to country, millions have been affected and thousands displaced. As the rescue and relief work continues to find and help those still badly in need. Laura Bundock, Sky News.
Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has asked the country's President Isaac Herzog to grant him a pardon. Mr Netanyahu has been on a long-running trial for corruption, which has divided the country. It comes weeks after Donald Trump called on Israel's president to pardon Netanyahu. Here's some of what Israel's Prime Minister had to say.
The state of Israel faces immense challenges alongside tremendous opportunities. To fend off the threats and to realise the opportunities, national unity is required. The continuation of the trial tears us apart from within, stirs up this division and deepens rifts. I am sure, like many others in the nation, that an immediate conclusion of the trial would greatly help to lower the flames and promote the broad reconciliation that our country so desperately needs.
In Hong Kong, at least 100 people remain unaccounted for as recovery teams continue to search and retrieve bodies from the burnt-out apartment complex in the Tai Po suburb. At least 146 people were killed and 79 others were injured in one of the city's worst fires. The cause of the fire remains under investigation, with growing public anger over missed warnings and unsafe construction practices. Well, earlier, hundreds of Filipinos living in Hong Kong who lost a member of their community in the fire laid flowers and sang hymns for all of the victims of the disaster. There's been an outpouring of support since the blaze, with thousands donating supplies to help those who lost their homes. Police in California say 3 of the 4 people killed in a mass shooting at a child's birthday party were children. The sheriff's office say the victims were aged 8, 9, 14 and 21. The attacker is still at large following the shooting in Stockton, east of San Francisco last night. 11 others were injured in the attack, which officers believe could have been a targeted incident. West Midlands police are facing further questions over the controversial decision to ban Maccabi Tel Aviv fans from attending an Aston Villa game early this month. It comes as Dutch police have released details of the full report into the disorder that broke out at a match in Amsterdam last year. But Sky News has found contradictions between the accounts of the 2 forces. Our sports correspondent Rob Harris reports.
How West Midlands police assessed violence a year ago in Amsterdam and why it led to them banning Maccabi Tel Aviv fans from Aston Villa has become not only a policing controversy, but a political one too. Understanding it means going back to November 2024 and the days of disorder around Maccabi's Europa League match against Ajax. It's these incidents that had to be assessed by authorities in England when deciding how to police Maccabi's visit to Villa this month. But the accuracy of this assessment has been called into question. Sky News has heard in depth from Dutch police about what they told officers in England about the threat posed by the Israeli supporters. What's not disputed by the police or indeed Maccabi is that Israeli ultras were involved in violent attacks and anti-Palestinian chants in Amsterdam. The report detailed how they armed themselves with belts and padlocks, attacking taxis and scooter riders. But it also exposes some apparent contradictions between the accounts of the 2 forces. In dispute are elements of this document, produced by West Midlands Police to justify advice to Birmingham's Safety Advisory Group why Maccabi fans were deemed too dangerous to be allowed into Villa. Here are the key claims. West Midlands Police said that 500 to 600 Maccabi fans apparently intentionally targeted Muslim communities in Amsterdam. Now, Amsterdam Police do say there were 500 to 800 high-risk Maccabi supporters, but they told me, we did not see large groups of Maccabi's fans going into Muslim-populated areas to target Muslims. Asked to clarify, they said provocations came from both sides. This all happened in the city centre. That's not the same as a large group of Maccabi fans going into Muslim-populated areas to target Muslims. This, from Amsterdam Police, goes into detail about how pro-Palestinian rioters actively searched for individuals they perceive as Israeli, Jewish or Maccabi supporters. And they say, unlike clashes between groups earlier, this was a fundamentally different form of violence. They're described as flash attacks that left Jews and Israelis in fear. So West Midlands Police had to assess the resources needed for the match. They claim 5,000 officers had to be deployed in Amsterdam around the Europa League game. But Amsterdam Police confirmed to us there were only 1,200 police deployed. It's raising new questions for the Aston Villa supporting Tory MP Nick Timothy, a former Home Office Special Advisor.
This isn't just about a football match. This isn't just about the rights of the Israeli supporters to come to Britain and watch their team. This is about whether we can trust the police to do their job without fear or favour, as the police oath requires them to do, and whether we can trust them to tell us the truth. They've presented an intelligence report that they say is based on information provided by the Dutch. The Dutch say that that information is not true. The West Midlands Police need the chance to justify their actions and to defend themselves. We should give them the chance to do that. But if they can't justify their actions, my view is that the position of the Chief Constable will be untenable.
The only time West Midlands Police have so far explained the decision on camera was in an interview with me on the day of the Villa match.
We have intelligence and information that says that there is a section of Maccabi fans, not all Maccabi fans, but a section of them who engage in quite significant levels of hooliganism. We've had examples where a section of Maccabi fans were targeting people not involved in football matches, and certainly we had an incident in Amsterdam last year which has informed some of our decision-making.
War in Gaza has inflamed community tensions worldwide, challenging policing. There were flashpoints at the match on the 6th of November. We were broadcasting live among Villa fans struggling to get into the stadium due to the policing and anti-Israel protests. The lack of major incidents left West Midlands Police feeling vindicated over their approach. But fast forward 3 weeks to Thursday night, and they did have hooliganism to deal with for another Europa League match at Villa. Assaults on their officers. A Villa player bleeding after being struck by a plastic cup. So why were Swiss club Young Boys allowed supporters at Villa Park? Because Sky News can reveal West Midlands Police assessed it as only a medium-risk fixture, even with Young Boys receiving 3 sets of UEFA punishments for unruly fan behaviour since 2023. Maccabi had faced no UEFA disciplinary cases recently, but their game was deemed high risk. The force said, West Midlands Police continue to remain satisfied in the veracity of our information and intelligence, which put public safety at the heart of our decision-making. We will be giving evidence to the Home Affairs Select Committee on Monday, and therefore it would be inappropriate to make further comment at this time. Few policing decisions have been as contentious as scrutinised this year, with Prime Minister Keir Starmer this week expressing fresh concern about the ban and policing decisions. Decisions being challenged long after the match has been played. Rob Harris, Sky News.
So, as you heard in Rob's piece there, West Midlands Police will be in front of the Home Affairs Select Committee tomorrow to answer questions about the decision. And there are reports that the Home Secretary, Shabana Mahmood, has instructed her civil servants to look into this. They reportedly spoke to their Dutch counterparts last week, so that story will be one to watch tomorrow. Meanwhile, Jeremy Corbyn has announced that his new political party will now officially be known as Your Party after a vote by members at its inaugural conference in Liverpool. It comes after his co-founder, Zara Sultana, used her conference address to hit out at unnamed people high up in the party due to the expulsion of members. Demonstrations have taken place in Sussex against a proposed migrant camp. Campaigners say they'll carry on until the plan to move more than 500 men into the Crowborough training camp is abandoned. It comes after the Home Office said it was still continuing to accelerate plans to move asylum seekers to the military base. The Pope has arrived in the Lebanese capital as part of his first foreign trip aimed at bringing a message of peace to the region. These were the scenes as Pope Leo arrived in Beirut, where he was greeted by the country's president and prime minister. A disgraced neurosurgeon accused of botching dozens of operations in Scotland may never face justice, according to a prominent lawyer. Professor Peter Watson, who represented British families after the Lockerbie bombing, fears former NHS Tayside Dr Sam El-Jamel could outrun the law in his native Libya, where he's believed to be back working. A public inquiry is now underway, with police looking at up to 200 cases of malpractice, as Conor Gillis reports.
Anne-Marie, Conor's going to ask you a question.
This is Anne-Marie today, paralysed, suffering, barely able to speak.
Can you explain what you think of El-Jamel? El-Jamel, the doctor.
Aye.
What do you think of him?
That doctor. Somebody.
Do you think he was bad?
Yeah.
If you could say something to him, what would you say to him?
Oh. Aye. Aye.
Sorry, Conor.
And this is Anne-Marie before 2 brain operations by Dr Sam El-Jamel on the NHS in Dundee. A family album that tells a story of far distant happiness.
She can't walk, she can't talk, she can't do nothing for herself. She needs care 24/7. Do you know what he's done to my wife and 200 other people? He mutilated them.
Once lauded as the best brain surgeon in Europe, El-Jamel was head of neurosurgery at Ninewells Hospital for almost 20 years. Now he is disgraced and banned from operating in Britain. A man allowed to move home to Libya without facing formal proceedings by regulators. Scottish police are also examining claims of up to 200 botched operations at his hands. Jules was El-Jamel's final patient before he was suspended by the NHS.
I went in for surgery, but he removed my tear gland instead of my brain tumour. Where was the checks and balances in all of this? Where was the systemic processes that El-Jamel should have been going through?
A public inquiry unpicking what went wrong is now underway. It comes as it emerged El-Jamel is still working in Libya. The public inquiry trying to get to the truth here has failed to track down Sam El-Jamel. We know that he has been operating in a hospital in Libya, so let's give them a call and see if they'll take our questions. The worker who answers the phone seems to confirm El-Jamel works at the Libyan hospital almost every day, but she declines to allow us to ask him any questions. This is the lawyer who represented British victims of the Lockerbie bombing, a case intertwined with Libyan politics.
Do you think, given your expertise in this area, that there could be a day where El-Jamel comes back to face Scottish justice?
I think the challenge is probably too big, and the steps that Crown Office and the police were required to take would require the cooperation and agreement of the Libyan authorities. It's difficult to see how that would happen. You would have to persuade the Libyan authorities that it was in the interests of their citizen and of Libya for this process to take place.
If it's okay with you.
And that is a painful thought for the patients harmed by their surgeon.
Is that okay?
Who say justice cannot stop at the border. Conor Gillis, Sky News.
Time now to get all the very latest sports news with Gavin.
Staying connected is vital for business. Sky Business sponsors this report.
Well, Evertonians are getting restless. Their team can't score goals and they need a win. The prospect of another long struggle against relegation is already looming. And Ruud Gullit isn't happy at the way things are mapping out at Newcastle either. They're just as desperate for points. So a real crunch match this.
There was some whisperings in the press, but there was no indication whatsoever of the imminent nature of what was going to happen that night.
It happened very quickly. I think I only got told maybe a couple of days leading up to the Newcastle game that the agent was phoning me saying that the club were looking to sell you. Yeah, it came out the blue really. Something I wasn't looking to do, I wasn't looking to move. I didn't want to move for the club.
We were under pressure from the bank to get the overdraft down. We were playing Newcastle and the chairman and joint owner were there and I wasn't there, I wasn't privy. It was news to me when it came through. Newcastle had come in with an £8 million offer. And Peter accepted it.
There were murmurs as the night progressed, and then it sort of reached the crescendo around the half an hour of the game mark, and I was getting bombarded by the press. You know, Duncan's going to Newcastle, Duncan's going to Newcastle. There was a group of fans appeared outside the stadium at the reception door.
A lot of us were in Spain covering Celta Vigo for Liverpool, which was taking place on the Tuesday. The Everton-Newcastle game was the Monday night. We started getting message that Duncan Ferguson was leaving.
I saw Michael Dunford, who was the Everton secretary at the time, you know, and in those days the secretary did all the signings and the transfers. And so I said to him, Michael, the press are going mad. They're saying Duncan Ferguson is leaving. And he said, rubbish. So I said, really? So he says, rubbish. So I said, okay. So off I went upstairs to the press room and I proclaimed in front of 40, 50 press guys, absolute rubbish.
Well, I'm sure they would have loved to have had him out there, Duncan Ferguson, because he's their leading scorer this season with 5 goals.
I was actually in one of these boxes here. I think it was in one next door. I got called up to speak to them after the game. That was the first meeting I'd had with them.
I walked back down the stairs and halfway down the stairs on one of the floors there by one of the lounges, there's a little chairman's office which he just uses on match days. And the door was ajar slightly. And I thought, that shouldn't be like that on a match day, you know, because obviously any fans could walk into it. So I thought, I'll just close the door, I'll just put my head round, see if there's anyone in there. So I put my head round the door and there's Ruud Gullit, Duncan Ferguson and his agent. And they're signing the contract.
It got explained to me really in the end that the club were struggling for a wee bit of money. I was the asset and they wanted to sell. That was the story I got told anyway. They got their £8 million for me.
You've got to remember also, Duncan had gone through a lot of the time with this hernia injury that was recurring all the time, and he didn't play anywhere near the number of games you would expect for your lead striker. You can understand Peter's thinking behind it.
It's the final whistle and it's relief all round at Goodison Park.
very frustrating because you sit down on the bench and you think like, nah, we're never going to score a goal, never. We need some power up front. We know that. We hope that it's going to happen very quickly.
He was a better player than most people thought he was. Of course, he was tough, but that is what I needed up front. I needed to have somebody who could hold the ball, keep the ball, and also animated the team. So therefore I needed Duncan.
Next minute, Duncan came down with his agent. They came out the door and there was a car waiting for him across the road.
Dunk's father was in the Winslow across the road and apparently walked in there and said, they've sold my son to Newcastle, and all hell was let loose.
He got in this car and off he went, and there were people jumping on the back of the car, there were people screaming.
Sky Business sponsors this report.
Well, that was Sky News at 10. Coming up, we'll take a first look at tomorrow's newspapers in the press preview. When we come back, I'll be joined by news editor at the Press Association, Theo Usherwood, and journalist and broadcaster Carolyn Quinn. Amongst the stories we'll be discussing, this on the front of the Metro, the claim from Chancellor Rachel Reeves, I didn't lie. Stay with us for more. We'll be right back.